Angel is at an LA bar, drunkenly talking to a stranger about Buffy. His eye is on a table of people partying and playing pool, including Sawyer from Lost. Turns out the two men are vampires getting takeout, and Angel stakes them both in a pretty cool battle. As the victims approach to thank him, he tells them to get away, and we can see in his eyes a thirst. Remember, he recently took a deep drink from the goblet of Buffy, and it's already been shown that Slayer blood has a profound effect on vampires.
Oh God, the power!
Clearly, he is suffering from some withdrawal. He has left Sunnydale, found a new ride, and is holed up in the basement of an old office space. And when he comes home, we meet for the first time.
Well, I like the place. Not much with the view, but it's got a nice back cave sort of an air to it.
Doyle. Doyle is half-demon, receives visions from the powers that be regarding bad stuff about to happen, and was sent to provide Angel fuel for his redemption. He passes the first one on right off the bat. Tina, who is obviously suffering from some distress over someone named Russell. Angel earns a modicum of trust and asks her if he can escort her for an evening. They end up at an LA entertainment soiree, and this is where we run into...
Cordeilla?
Oh my God. Angel?
Cordy hasn't changed a bit. Says she's now living on a beach in Malibu and then acting is just clicking for her. Then she needs to get back to mingling.
Well, I better get mingly. I really should be talking to people that are somebody. Tact is just not saying true stuff.
Tina gets grabbed and Angel saves her in the parking lot. At his place, Tina describes Russell in no uncertain terms as a bad guy.
He likes pain. I mean, he really does.
Angel does some research at the LA library and discovers Russell's pattern. Tina sees Angel's note from Doyle and runs out in a fit of distrust. Later that night, Angel finds her body. And at Russell's mansion, he is being given the lowdown from a lawyer named Lindsey McDonald as to how her death is being hidden.
Wolfram & Hart is a full-service law firm, Mr. Winters.
And on the video of the party, Russell spies Cordy. As Cordy is being driven to Russell's mansion, Angel drags a spineless Doyle along with him.
I'm just the messenger.
And I'm the message.
At the mansion, we gain some insight into Cordy's struggle, and then in what is my favorite bit in the episode...
Hey, you're a vampire!
What? No, I'm not.
She may not be a big city girl, but she is most certainly a Sunnydale alum. Angel breaks into the mansion and saves Cordy, letting Russell go. He then breaks into Wolfram & Hart and pushes Russell out a window, which leads to a pretty spectacular death. I think this is actually one of the best stunts in the series. Both the stuntman and the camera were attached to a decelerating cable falling at the same speed. Back at the office... and Cordy has appointed herself as manager of Angel's new mission. All things considered, it's a pretty good pilot. My favorite sequence is the opening, which sets up one of our central metaphors, strongly lays out the early season motifs, as well as instantly departs from Buffy. Though in the DVD commentary for the pilot, Whedon said he immediately felt a sense of betrayal over how he began Buffy versus how he began Angel. The last time he had a girl threatened in an alley, she turned out to be the Slayer, but here the women needed a big, strong hero to save them. But it's Angel's complexity, right now reflected more in his backstory than the evidence of his time on Buffy, that drew Whedon to the show. And part of that complexity is established in the opening visual metaphor of the episode. Angel is at a bar drinking, which visually establishes the metaphor of him being a recovering alcoholic, one I believe is constant throughout the rest of the show and dovetails well with the ideas about redemption and sacrifice. Whedon and Greenwalt designed Angel the series as a noir, a term that I think most people feel like they understand but probably can't define, myself included. And there's a reason for that. What specifically defines noir is actually a continuing debate, other than the general consensus as to some common visual and character tropes. The genesis of noir as a category is due to a fairly complex set of circumstances relating to the studio system in the 30s and 40s. For instance, the visual language of noir was originally driven by the necessity of minimalism in 30s black and white B movies, as in what is the minimum visual information necessary to provide the story. Consequently, there's a lot of strong single-source lighting, dark shadows, low angles, and maximum wild contrast. American cinematographer Ellen Davio said in Noir what's important are the lights you don't turn on. And that stark visual language filtered into the common story and character tropes as well. Noir sprung out of a sense of nihilism leading up to and just after World War II. Consequently, the common narrative tropes were ones that both lent themselves well to that simple visual language and reflected the current feelings in the cultural zeitgeist. The hard-boiled detective, the damsel in distress.
I came here to be a famous movie star. But they weren't hiring.
Crime stories, cynicism, moral ambiguity.
You can't cut yourself off, Doyle. I don't want to share my feelings. I don't want to open up. I want to find the guy that killed Tina, and I want to look him in the eye.
Still, David Greenwalt lists the scene where Angel jumps in the wrong car in the parking lot as one of the most important bits in the pilot. It's a mission statement moment shouting that Angel the series is going to attempt to subvert the classic Noir, not retread it. But ignoring all that, the whole opening scene just kicks ass. You've got a great little fight sequence, climaxing in what ends up being one of the visual icons from the series, the double stake. You've got some heavily John Woo-influenced low-angle bits of Angel walking towards the camera with his cape-like trench flapping behind him. You have his Batman-like gadgets, and then his inner struggle to never drink again. It's one part noir detective, one part supernatural thriller, and one part comic book superhero. The cast feels a little sparse at the moment, but promising. The one I found most charismatic and interesting from the start was Doyle, played by Becky's former boyfriend, Quinn, and was quite excited to see where they might go with his character over the course of the series. I love how his half-human demon dichotomy reflects in his dialogue and behavior.
It's about reaching out to people, showing them that there's love and hope still left in this world.
Hey, spare change?
Get a job, you lazy self.
And of course, that dichotomy reflects the show's subversive elements. And Cordy instantly feels like a better fit here than she did on Buffy. There were more than a few episodes of Buffy where it seemed like the writers didn't know exactly how to include Cordy, especially after the Xander breakup. Already, Cordelia feels more at home to me with Angel in LA than she did within the confines of Sunnydale. At most, Sunnydale would have a Baroness. LA is a city for a queen, and she is, even here, a perfect foil for Angel's broody loner Batman routine. I also loved how she preemptively figures out Russell is a vampire. Cordy is not dumb. While it's a topic I avoided in why you should watch Angel, I think in setting the table for this season of the Angel Guide, it's important to talk briefly about the core distinctions between Buffy and Angel. I'm going to speak overall about both shows without getting into any specific spoilery details, I hope. Where Buffy has a pretty defined, you might be tempted to use the word rigid symbolic structure, Angel does not. On Buffy, you had the big bad, who was usually in some way after Buffy. That big bad stood for some sort of impediment to growing up, and that impediment tended to structure the manner in which the season arc unfolded. Early on, even the episodes that were seemingly about the Scoobies and not Buffy were always nearly in some way thematically related to her and her season arc. And each season represented a concise step on that path to adulthood, which constructed Buffy's life. In an interview, Whedon stated that there were two things he tends to write about: the journey to power and the idea of the burden of power. Buffy is the first, Angel is the second, which is one thing that accounts for their drastic differences in style. Whedon has admitted that early on, he didn't know how to write Angel the series, this big, handsome, sexy pile of man meat with superpowers and a cape. He couldn't relate to the character the way he could to Buffy. And the supporting cast on Angel, which each have a function to enhance the show, are actually not related to him symbolically. And that lack of metaphor tether gives them much more interesting potential stories than what some of the Scoobies got in Buffy's first 3 seasons. But because Whedon felt like he didn't know how to write Angel, what he'd end up doing as a matter of process was to tear him down each season to try and figure him out, leading to he and David Greenwalt reinventing the show each season as they found a better grasp of who Angel was. Angel's seasons are actually deconstructions of his character, the inverse of Buffy's seasons. It's partially why the seasons don't always have a specific single character big bad. The show just didn't need one, as Angel is often his own adversary. But we'll get into that further as we go on. Lastly, I want to have a quick chat with those of you new to Angel about patience and how to watch the show. I say all this assuming you came here from Buffy, but if you didn't, this still applies. Given Whedon's admitted struggles with the character, it goes without saying that there are some hurdles to get through. It's a question I get a lot. Should you watch Angel's episodes as they aired, as in Buffy Season 4, Episode 1, Angel Season 1, Episode 1, Buffy Season 4, Episode 2, Angel Season 1, Episode 2? Or should you watch one complete show and then the other complete show? When Angel started, Buffy had been on the air for 3 years already. By Season 4, the cast and crew had found their strides, and the show has a light and easy chemistry to it that is liquid joy to drink in. I found switching between them sometimes sapped my experience of Angel's first season. And despite there being a small handful of crossover episodes between the two shows, I actually enjoyed Angel much more when I watched it sequentially and didn't swap in Buffy. But I'm sure there will be a hot debate over this in the comments, and in fairness, the very first time I watched Angel, I did swap. But the thing I most wanted to emphasize is, however you choose to watch Angel, be patient with it. The first season has some growing pains. It can be dry and a little cheesy at times. I'm certainly not going to hold back on those problems here in the guide, but never forget Buffy's first season. What I can say for most of you is that if you give it some space and time to discover itself, it will find a place in your heart. It certainly did for me.